father sits alone in the quiet. His son is dead, and he is turning himself into something sharp. The blood-soaked fireworks of Christmas night are almost here. But before any of that, he needs to know exactly who he is going after. Brian walks into the police station playing the role of a grieving victim. He asks Inspector Dennis where things stand with his son's case. Left alone in the office for a few minutes, he notices something covering the entire wall. Photographs, dozens of them, all gang members. He recognizes faces immediately. These are the people who took his son from him. Brian quietly pulls out his phone and photographs every inch of that wall. Then one image stops him cold. A bald man staring back at him from a sketch pinned to the wall. His name is Playa. This is the man who shot Brian in the neck and left him bleeding out in an alley. Inspector Dennis walks back in and catches Brian already heading for the door. The detective studies Brian's face for just a moment. Something is already growing behind those eyes, a deep hatred that has clearly taken root and is not going anywhere. Brian goes home and transfers every photograph onto his own wall. He maps out a plan to eliminate all of them in a single night. Christmas Day, the 1-year anniversary of his son's death. From this point forward, the preparation begins. Brian trains every single day without letting up. He pushes his body past every limit he believed he had. He studies combat techniques and works through professional methods of incapacitation one by one. Early on, he can barely get through the most basic physical drills. Weeks later, he is handling heavy combat training without breaking pace. He buys a beaten-up old car from a dealership, paying cash. As he pulls out of the lot, the wipers drag across the dusty windshield, his targets coming slowly into focus. He takes the car home and starts modifying it right away. The sound of hammering fills the house day after day. His wife knows exactly what is happening. She understands it, but there is nothing she can do to pull him back from it. A strong body alone will not be enough. Without accurate shooting, none of this works, and Brian knows it. His first visit to the range is a disaster. Every shot flies wide, nothing close to center. He walks away and throws himself into studying firearms with the same total obsession he applies to everything else. That night, the weight of all of it finally cracks them both open. Brian and his wife hold each other through the dark without a single word passing between them. He understands her completely, and they both understand the unspoken truth sitting between them. She is going to leave. Not because the love between them is gone, because spending time apart may be the only thing that lets either of them survive what is coming. She wipes her tears, picks up her bags, and walks out the door without looking back. Her leaving removes the last worry that was still anchoring him. Now we learn how all of this started. Christmas Day, a happy family of 3, celebrating together in their backyard. Then without any warning, the night exploded. Gunshots cracked through the air, and tires screamed across wet asphalt. 2 rival gangs were firing at each other somewhere nearby. Stray bullets scattered in every direction, with no regard for anything in their path. Brian and his wife threw themselves over their son without thinking. When the shooting stopped and the cars vanished, they looked down. Blood was soaking through their son's clothes. He was already gone. Brian tore after the cars immediately, driven by nothing but pure, uncontrolled fury. He followed the sound of the gunfire and sprinted toward both gangs still shooting in the street. He spotted a green car and chased it into a narrow alley. He found a crowbar buried in a pile of garbage and swung it hard against the vehicle. The car wobbled for a moment, but straightened out and kept going. Then the green car reversed and came back for him. Brian was trapped in that alley with no way out. He stumbled trying to get clear. A man climbed out of the car holding a gun and fired directly into Brian's side. That man's name was Playa, the gang leader. Playa stood over Brian bleeding on the ground, raised the gun again without any hesitation, and fired a second shot directly into Brian's neck. Then he walked back to the car and drove away without a word. The scene moves to a hospital room. Inspector Dennis stops by out of nothing more than curiosity, wanting to know if Brian is still breathing. He leaves his business card on the table and walks out without saying a thing. Something strange starts happening outside Brian's hospital window. A parrot appears on the ledge every single day, staying there for hours at a time, watching over him as if his son's spirit has somehow found its way back in a different form, keeping vigil, waiting for Brian to wake up and return. Eventually, those quiet prayers are answered. His wife comes every day without missing once. The parrot comes every day without missing once. Slowly, Brian begins to recover and pushes through the long road of rehabilitation. But the damage to his vocal cords is permanent. He will never speak again for the rest of his life. Inside a room where no sound can escape, his mouth opens and nothing comes out. When Brian finally comes home, the memories hit him like a wave. His wife wraps her arms around him from behind and holds him there. The soccer ball in the yard has gone completely flat. The house is exactly as it was on that Christmas day. The gifts his son never got to open are still sitting under the tree. The pain is unbearable. Brian crosses to the refrigerator and pulls out a bottle of liquor. He tilts his head back and drinks deeply. His wife stands in the doorway and watches him without speaking. Then her own grief comes apart all at once, erupting out of her with everything she has been holding back. There is no mother anywhere in the world who can lose a child and remain unbroken forever. Brian locks himself in the basement and disappears into alcohol and grief for weeks. Then one day, somewhere in a drunken haze, he thinks of his son and something shifts inside him. He cannot allow himself to stay buried like this. The seed of revenge begins to push its way up through the darkness. It is October. Just over 2 months before Christmas. Brian starts building intelligence late into every night. His enemies are not a small handful of criminals anymore. They are the entire membership of both gangs who were out there shooting that night. He tracks every movement he can find and documents every criminal act he witnesses. He watches Playa closely, but Playa keeps slipping out of view. Then Brian picks up on another man named Anthony. He watches him carry a travel bag out of a building and climb into a car. Brian films everything and adds it to his wall. Thanksgiving comes and goes, and Brian pushes his training into an entirely different category. His body has been rebuilt completely over these months. The weak and shattered man is gone. What stands in his place moves like a weapon. He masters car drifting techniques that take professional drivers years to develop. His shooting has become surgical. Every shot dead center, no drift, no hesitation. The months of preparation are finally behind him. Christmas is closing in, and the revenge is ready to launch. Late one night, Brian climbs through a window and enters Anthony's house. Anthony hears the noise and comes out to check what's going on. Brian hits him before Anthony can even register what is happening. Anthony tumbles down the stairs and does not get back up. Brian drags him down to the basement and suspends him upside down from the ceiling. He covers his face with a welding mask so Anthony cannot identify him. Then the interrogation starts. Brian holds up printed questions one at a time and forces Anthony to write the answers. Gang operations, money laundering methods, names, locations. Anthony looks at the wall covered in surveillance material and realizes how much danger he is in. He still tries to resist, so Brian drives a knife into the wood directly in front of his face. The message needs no translation. Anthony pretends to give in. Then, in one sudden burst, he breaks free, grabs the knife, and drives it straight into Brian. Brian was not prepared for that. The blade goes in and he stumbles back hard. He has never been in real combat before, and that inexperience cost him severely in this moment. But through desperate effort and sheer will, he fights back and beats Anthony down until he stops moving. It is now December 24th, the night Brian has been aiming toward for more than a year. He lays out his weapons and gear and goes through everything carefully. He thinks about his wife. He chooses not to see her before he leaves. He cannot tell if what he is feeling is guilt or grief or something tangled between the two. Instead, Brian picks up the gift that was never opened. He drives to the cemetery, kneels at his son's grave, and sets the gift down gently against the stone. He presses his hand flat against the cold surface and stays there in silence for a very long time. Everything he needs to say is locked somewhere behind the quiet. As night falls, Brian drops Anthony's bound body on Inspector Dennis's doorstep with a red envelope placed beside him. Anthony is arrested within minutes. Dennis takes the envelope inside and opens it carefully. A handwritten note falls out, stating plainly that everything will end tonight. He finds a USB drive tucked inside and plugs it in. What's on it stops him where he sits. Everything is there. Every criminal act committed by Playa's gang, every relationship, every transaction location, and Anthony's full written confession. Months of methodical surveillance compressed into one devastating package. Brian compiled all of it for one reason: to make sure the police finish whatever he leaves unfinished tonight. Brian is driving toward Playa's hideout when a police broadcast crackles over the radio. Armed robbery in progress nearby. He redirects and drives toward it instead. The men carrying out the robbery are large and heavily built. Brian does not rush in. He takes a flanking position and waits for them to commit to their movement. Then he drives his car directly into both of them at full speed. The impact is brutal, but one of them grabs onto the car and refuses to let go. Brian hammers the brakes and swerves wildly, trying to throw the man from the roof. Nothing works. After several more gunshots, blood begins running slowly down the windshield. Brian sits in the silence that follows and feels something change inside him. This is the first time he has taken a human life. He sits with that for a moment before reaching into the back seat. He takes out a wrapped package and throws it over the fence of Playa's compound. Inside is the severed hand of Anthony, the key holder of Playa's gang. One of Playa's men finds it and brings it straight to the gang leader. Playa stares at the hand and goes completely rigid with rage. He immediately decides this was done by the rival gang led by Ruiz and orders his men to hit back hard and without hesitation. This was Brian's plan from the beginning: spark a war between both gangs and let them destroy each other. The two sides erupt into a full firefight in the streets. Brian is about to enter the chaos when something unexpected stops him. Police officers are surrounded and taking fire from both directions. A female officer is pinned down with nowhere left to go. Brian makes a decision. He drives his car in fast circles around her position and opens fire on the gang members closing in, clearing them out one by one from the moving vehicle. A reckless gang member pulls out his phone and starts streaming the whole thing live. Playa watches his men going down one after another through that small screen. He watches the car moving through the carnage like something that shouldn't exist. He watches Brian neutralize men like they're nothing. And for the first time all night, genuine fear takes hold of him. Brian stops the car in front of the officer and she climbs in. But before he can drive clear, she is hit in the back by a bullet. He drives as hard as he can, trying to get her somewhere, but she does not make it. She is gone before they clear the block. He closes his eyes for just a second, then he drives. He finds the man who was streaming the violence and rams his car into him. He takes the phone while it is still recording and looks directly into the camera. Then he sends the footage to Playa. Playa watches it and the panic becomes total. He finally understands who has been coming for him all night. He drops $5,000 in the gang chat for anyone who takes Brian out before sunrise. Brian spots Ruiz and drives past him slowly. A deliberate invitation. He pulls onto a bridge and stops. He reaches into the seat beside him and takes out a small music accessory. He holds it quietly. It is the only connection he has to his son tonight. He presses it softly to his lips, a promise that every person responsible will face justice before this night is through. He hears Ruiz coming and floors it. A car explodes out of a side street and crashes into Brian's vehicle with everything it has. Ruiz has found him. A brutal high-speed chase tears through the city streets. Inspector Dennis is monitoring the police radio as the reports pour in. Two gangs ripping each other apart, and a single vehicle carving its way through all of it. Dennis absorbs the information and sits with it. Then something clicks into place. He understands exactly what this night is. At his hideout, Playa is with a woman in a dimly lit room when the calls start coming in. He summons every member of his crew back to the compound immediately. Brian gets word that Playa has called everyone in. He pulls on his coat, checks his weapons one final time, and moves. The third and final round begins. Gang members converge on the hideout from every direction. Brian moves through the shadows alongside them and slips inside just as the rolling shutter is dropping. He charges through the gap at the last second. The ground floor is chaos. Brian moves through it with deliberate precision, clears the lower level, and finds the stairs to the roof. Before heading up, he plants mines along the access points to slow anyone trying to follow. On the roof, he moves through the darkness, tracking by sound. Then Ruiz steps out, still alive, still furious. Ruiz is physically bigger than Brian, and the fight goes badly right away. Ruiz drives him into a defensive position and begins to take over completely. Then Brian hears it, the mines detonating below. The explosion rips the roof access apart and sends men flying. Ruiz turns toward the sound for just a fraction of a second. Brian uses that fraction and counters hard. Inspector Dennis reaches the rooftop. The path up is lined with bodies. He moves forward and runs into gang members still on their feet, taking them down with a clean and precise combination of strikes. The two men come face to face on the rooftop. Brian keeps his gun raised. Dennis looks at him and sees a father. He sees the full weight of what a year of grief, preparation, and unrelenting pain actually looks like on a person. He lowers his weapon completely. Then gunfire erupts from behind a door, and both men take bullets. They exchange a single glance and split to flank the position from opposite sides. Brian steps out of the shadows and finds a woman standing there. She turns around slowly, her face streaked with tears, her expression desperate and small and frightened. Brian hesitates. His gun drops slightly. That hesitation nearly costs him everything. She fires. Dennis takes 2 shots coming around the other side. Brian raises his weapon and pulls the trigger. He stands there for a moment holding the blood-stained gun. Then he pushes through to Playa's room. Playa is already waiting. Brian is covered in wounds and barely upright. His body has nothing left to give. Playa raises his gun and takes complete control of the moment. Then a single shot rings out. Dennis hits Playa from across the room. The shot does not kill him. Dennis is not a perfect marksman. One final strike and Playa drops and does not get up again. Brian stands in the silence that follows. The room is still. Christmas night is over. His son is still gone, and the silence now is louder than any gunshot has ever been. If you made it through this devastating and powerful film, you just witnessed one of the most emotionally brutal revenge stories ever put on screen. Smash that like button if Brian's silent journey hit you somewhere deep. Subscribe because we are breaking down every powerful thriller worth your time. What movie should we cover next? Drop it in the comments below. Thanks for watching. We will see you in the next one.